Hey guys, what's going on? This is Lord Fever here. He's not wearing his shades. That's because, as I promised in my last video, I was going to continue doing a lot more things than covers, story time whatsoever. And as you see, I got my phone here and got a story, which means story time. And I'm going to be reading a CreepyPasta. Today's CreepyPasta, we're going to be reading Blue's Clues Sorrow. I'm sure you heard a lot of other YouTubers read it. And now it's my turn. So here we go. Blue's Clues Lost episode Sorrow. To protect my privacy, I have to decide to keep my name anonymous. Anonymous. I'm not sure how to begin my story, but I'll do the best I can. I guess I'll start by informing you about the show Blue's Clues. For those of you who have never seen Blue's Clues, it is a show for young children that was created in 1996. Hey, that was the year I was born. And lasted for 10 years with a total of 6 seasons and 141 episodes. The show involves Steve, or Joe, looking for clues and solving mysteries with the help from the audience. Blue was an animated dog who labeled clues with her paw prints. Blue's Clues was a hit with many little kids, including me. The idea was original. The artwork was amazing. However, Steve Burns was the backbone of the show. Steve Burns was the actor who played Steve. He was more serious than Barney the Dinosaur. He was more serious than Barney the Dinosaur. He loved kids and knew exactly how to make them happy. There was just something magical and about his enthusiasm that made me want to watch more and more of his episodes. Sadly, he left the show in 2002 and pursued a musical career. Steve was replaced with Donovan Patton, who was the actor for Joe, Steve's brother. But it wasn't the same. I stopped watching Blue's Clues after Steve left. The show lost its magic for me. Joe was nothing like Steve. He was a total goofball, and my mother told me that Donovan Patton was acting too hard. When I was 16, my family moved into a large 3-story house in upstate New York. I was previously owned. Let me start that again. When I was 16, my family moved into a large 3-story house in upstate New York that was previously owned by a nice old lady. A few days after moving in, I decided to do some exploring in the attic. I found an old box, and to my surprise, it was filled with a bunch of old VHS tapes. All of them were Blue's Clues tapes. I knew the old lady's cell phone number. I decided to call her and ask her about the tapes. She told me that she bought them from a collector a few years back for her little grandson to watch. After I thanked her, I hung up. I emptied the box before checking the tapes. All of them had episodes that I already watched except for one. The one tape I found had a regular sticker, not a factory sticker, but just not like a factory sticker like all the other tapes had. The title of the sticker was Blue's Clues Sorrow. I thought the title was a little strange, but I figured it was just a copy of the one where Steve goes to college, or one where Steve goes off to college and Joe takes his place, because Steve says goodbye to all his friends in that episode. I considered that episode to be very sorrow indeed. More parents went on their anniversary trip and left me in charge in the house for one night. I figured out it would be the perfect opportunity to check out the tape. Our TV had a VCR, and I admit I felt a tingle of excitement when I placed the tape in the player. I was about to relive my childhood memories watching Blue's Clues. I didn't care that I was old to watch it. I knew for sure I would enjoy it. At least that's what I thought. I also started off with the usual opening sequence. The Blue's Clues book opened up. Steve looked out the window of the house and said a very unusual season 4 opening phrase. "Hi, it's me, Steve. Is that you?" "It is? Great. Could you help me find Blue?" "Wait. She's not here. Well, come on in. The front door opened and Steve was in the living room looking concerned. I need to tell you something important. Blue is at the vet, and she's having an operation on her heart. I hope she's okay. Steve stopped and looked around at the floor. The scene ended. It cut to a scene where Steve was on the phone when he heard a woman's voice saying the following. Her heart stopped beating. We tried our best, but we couldn't get it to beat. I'm so sorry. The scene ended. The next scene started with a title card that said months have passed after Blue's funeral. A deep voice spoke. There are 5 stages in this grieving process: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, the voice said. Steve will experience 3 stages all at once: depression, anger, and mental illness. Steve was in his bedroom, lying in bed, began to cry. The color of the episode turned black and white, like a depressing old photograph. Steve cried so hard, his breathing grew shallow. The scene ended. The next scene showed Steve sitting up on his bed. He stopped crying, but his face was now red with his teeth gritted. He held his stuffed anteater Horace with both hands as he screamed at the top of his lungs. His scream sent chills down my spine. Steve ripped off Horace's head and black ooze squirted out the stuffed animal's neck. Steve threw Horace in a fit of rage. Then the anteater landed. Its ooze completely covered the floor. I felt the urge to vomit again. Against my better judgment, I decided to keep watching. Steve's body began to turn darker and darker color by the second. In about 5 seconds, Steve turned completely black. He got up out of bed, walked out to the living room, walked out of his bedroom, walked into his living room. I thought he was going to sit on his thinking chair, but he didn't. He just stood in front of the chair and stared at the screen for a full minute. His eyes lost their pupils. It became nothing more than white dots. He started to cry again, and white tears streamed down his face. Some sad piano music played. The music was so heartbreaking. I shed a few tears myself. A message flashed across the screen said, You can figure out Blue's Clues, but you can't figure out insanity. And if you're wondering what the picture looks like of Steve, this is what it looks like. You can use your imagination if you want to of what this story could look like when Blue died and how, yeah. So anyways, moving on. The scene ended. Next scene showed Steve and still standing in the living room. He was no longer crying. His body was completely normal color. I can't live without Blue, he said. She was my best friend. She gave my life happiness and meaning. Without her, I have nothing to live for. The kids in the background that helped Steve find Clue started to cry and whimpered. They shouted, Please don't do it, Steve. We love you. We're your friends too. I'm sorry, Steve said. I'm sorry if I break your hearts for doing this, but I have no other choice. Goodbye. He held the container. The camera zoomed in on the label, which said cyanide. Steve had a calm look on his face as he swallowed the contents of the container. He instantly collapsed into the carpet. He foamed at the mouth, his body twitching, crashed to the floor. He began like he was being electrocuted. Steve stopped moving, and I knew that he was dead. The episode finally ended with the Nickelodeon logo. It it's shaped as a lighter for it's, the episode finally ended with the Nickelodeon. It's shaped as a lighter for a few seconds as my TV cut to static. I sat, still dazed, as it took my brain a few minutes to comprehend what I'd just watched. I made a decision, then there to play detective to find out more in the world that where this episode came from. I looked up the name of the episode online, but I came up with nothing. I knew that the company Viacom owned Blue's Clues. So, because their company name was shown on the factory stickers of the other VHS tapes, I decided to research a bit more. After I did more research, I wrote a letter to Viacom headquarters. I told them about my experience and asked them if they knew where the tape came from. 2 weeks later, I got a reply in the mail. Dear Mr. We thank you for taking your time to write to us about us. We were quite surprised by your story about the unaired episode Blue's Clues that you discovered. We are grateful that you have contacted us concerning it. We personally assure you that Viacom Media Networks, as well as Viacom, claims no ownership or liability whatsoever regarding the episode. However, we still feel that an explanation is in order. Unfortunately, we are unable to provide the details of the tape's creation, as we simply don't know how this happened. Back in 2002, we received a VHS tape package with no return. The words Mr. Ted were written on the package. Along with the tape, there was a letter from Mr. Ted stating that he was the biggest fan of Blue's Clues series and asked for our approval to air his fan-made creation on television. We were quite flattered that a fan would send us a fan-made video episode for airing. However, when our editors viewed the episode for refinement, they were quite appalled by its nature. A few of the staff who viewed this episode unbelievably went into shock and had to be transported to the emergency room immediately. Due to horrifying content, we had absolutely no plans to air this episode. We passed the tape to a private collector, but we were dismayed to discover that he had many copies made. We ask you that you please do not release the contents of the tape or this letter to a public, as we do not want to upset the viewers who love and support our show for young children. With warm regards, Michael D. Fricklass, Executive President, General Counsel, and Secretary. Questions bounced around inside my head. There was still to this day who the hell was Mr. Ted? How is he able to create this demonic episode? Is he even, human? I have no respect for Viacom. I'm afraid I cannot provide any footage. However, I figured releasing the single screenshot and a copy of the letter to the public wouldn't make them too angry. You're probably wondering, why are you telling me this? What's the point of the story? To be honest, I just wanted to get it off my chest. I kept it a secret for a little while, but eventually it felt like the desire to tell someone, whether they believed me or not. Part of my brain told me to throw away the tape and the letter, but I kept it both in my closet to remind me that what I experienced was real. I now realize that some so-called fans of shows are not as normal as you might think they are. The end. And that was Blue Clues Sorrows. Yeah, probably a story that it's a story that I like. I mean, yeah, scary, but let's try reading another story. Let's see, what story to read. Uh, let's see if they have any creepypastas that are. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Let's see, let's see. Man, there's a lot. I mean, alright. Here's one story I was never able to tell on my channel. Probably one of the most darker stories I've ever read. And yes, it's creepypasta. Something that I consider to be the best. At the same time, something that sent chills on my spine. Big chills, that is. The lost episode of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. So here we go. I always loved watching the adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. The show was about a kid named Jimmy Neutron, who was a boy genius. The cutting-edge CG of his oversized head and undulating anger issues hid a very sinister secret that I dare not talk about until this day. You see, Jimmy Neutron aired on Nickelodeon, and he was named after the neutron, a negatively charged electron that bond with the positron to create a positively charged nucleus. I'm not really a fan of science. I believe and think atoms are just conspiracy created by CNN. But Jimmy was different. I was probably the biggest fan of the newt. I loved all that stuff. So when I saw a VHS tape floating in midair outside my house, tied to a string, I knew I'd be the lucky guy. I've been breaking down my whole life, and I had no one to cry to. You can only drown your sorrows in alcohol so much that you're up to your neck and ready to drown. And at this point, your junior trying to be just shaped like a woman glued together by her own dried. I'd rather not say this by your own by your own grief is all you have left. There are a number of neutrinos flowing through your body, and every minute and every day. These were dubbed God's. So many inappropriate words in this that I'm not going to even read, because I do hear that if you swear, you're jealous views. By the New York Times, my favorite publication. I tell you this because the following story I'm going to shock you. Jimmy Neutron was Nickelodeon's first big superhero, followed by Little Bill, played by Bill Cosby, voicing a child. When he was an all-star, someone you should believe, an all-true hero. Yeah, Bill Cosby is not. If you ever been in love, you know that all love is false and the universe in an illusion. Children are the most simulation of reality that we'll never actually experience. That's why they play dress up and have tea parties, so they can simulate being an adult. But when you get there, it's a disappointment, and all your back alley box social brouhaha is with the local homeless ruffians only leaves you covered in cockroaches and sexually transmitted side diseases. You know, when I first read this story, now that I'm telling you the story, I was thinking to myself, is this a Jimmy Neutron Lost episode of a story? Or is just a guy explaining about his daily life? Like, this makes no sense. But all I had to do was just keep on reading, instead of just jumping to conclusions. I'll still leave me. Anyways. You just know adults are miserable and scary, full of disappointment and feeling of regret. Oh yeah, Neutron. I put the tape in, I pressed play, and heard the intro music play. Wow, I love this show. I've been watching it my life. I've been watching it all my life. Years, in fact. I'm middle-aged, but I relate to Jimmy's dilemmas involving science and that pesky villain. Yes, that pesky villain. What I saw sent my jaw to the floor, and I never forgot it until this day. My spine began to tingle, and it's not just what I have. And it's not just because I have scoliosis. I wear a special back brace when I play tag team football. It's because this was scary. I got goosebumps also. Not the books by Earl Stein, possibly the fatal medical condition where tiny bumps form your skin because you're so scared that it's scary. He doesn't have to mention why. It's just so funny. I was so freaking scared. I served 10 years in Vietnam and saw many of my friends brutally maimed, murdered, and shaved, but this was worse. Jimmy Neutron had no eyes. His eyes were floating. You could hear some man snickering in the background. A producer, maybe? The producers of this show were known as users of the cocoa plant, or cocaine. In a special interview by the real creator, the one who drafted, not John A. Davis, a fake surname of a non-existent man reveals that Jimmy Neutron was a result of the scientifically degenerate cocaine user visiting a science fair with children before he was arrested for making a scene. He didn't even have children. Who was this guy? Jimmy Neutron was trying to power a light bulb with a potato and screaming. He looked so mad. His eyes were bloodshot. Dish. He was huffing and puffing, ever so menacingly. He looked so mad. Listen to me, you idiots! He was so angry. He was yelling at his friends. The fat one, although producers originally wanted to make a fourth season planned for this season were scrapped after DNA Productions closing the result of the lackluster performance of the Amp Bully. Listen to me, you little punk. He was talking to the potato. Wow, you will live. You will live, he said angrily. He picked up the potato and threw it on the floor, stomping it. My eyes grew wide as the saucer of the horn as saucers and the horror inside my body intensified. I felt like puking, to be honest. This was disgusting. I could see the eyes of the potato. It was crying. Hearts contain electrical charges. Everything is electrical, in fact. The potato was crying because it tried so hard to be human, but it never could be. Tears were streaming down the potato's face as it pleaded. A small voice box crying, "Please don't kill me, Father. I am human." Go to hell, the neutron screamed. You could see some police officers come in. "Activate shooter," one of them screams. He was holding a potato, but it just looked like a gun. I know you won't believe me, but they shot Jimmy square in the head. It looked way too realistic for this sort of show. He was an unarmed boy at a science fair yelling at a potato, and they shot him. Jimmy Neutron was dead. What happened next shocked me, and I will never forget this day. Of all the characters being started to dance and sing, smiling, Judy Neutron, Cindy Vortex, and Carl Weezer. Mrs. Fowl was doing something so weird and inappropriate. I started to puke. Professor Calamitous and the others CG skeletons walked in. Some fat. I don't even know how a skeleton can be fat. I guess it's true. Fat people are big boned. They all began to sing. Well, we had our laughs and we had our fun, but we murdered you with a potato gun. You saw it hanging on the string because you're the VHS king. The excitement never ends in a Lost episode land. Now come along and take my hand. Sounds like that last part sounds like something in Dragon Tales. We'll take you to beyond the stars and leave you in a dumpster. Come and sing a song. What horror story is next? King Kong? You know this because the VHS tales are so clever. We will stop doing this? Never. Oh, nobody's listening. Go to hell. Don't put this exciting tale on the shelf. I'm actually just reading. I'm really a depressed man, projecting my mental issues onto kids. Jimmy Neutron was a good show. Once I watched for 5 minutes. Once. The character started to mumble one. They started to mumble. One was suggesting 9/11 was an inside job. Another said that the Sandy Hook was a hoax. And they all stopped and looked through the camera at me. They were looking through the camera at me. The potato smiled and put a top hat and cane and crudely toward me a narrative. My boy, he gave a wink and nudged a stroll down and a nudge and strolled down the street. I didn't want to watch this strolling potato. It was disturbing. The people just stared at the potato. It was not science. Science-related things are not science. This potato was metaphysical. It was a metaphysical nightmare. a concoction of horror and nothing else. I couldn't watch this anymore. This was supposed to be Jimmy Neutron. This was supposed to be Jimmy Neutron last episode. I didn't want to watch a damn potato walking down the street will float because the CG wasn't very good due to its budget. Constraints of there was no sky, and instead you saw one of those devs snickering to themselves as they re-entered the potato. Dad, I want to go home, the potato cried, but it sounded like Jimmy, the Jimmy Neutron voice actor. Dobie Debbie whatever her name is. The potato strolled down the street before the cane collapsed, and the whole thing spun out. Jimmy started rambling about the social power structure of his potato form. Then I shut the tape off. I didn't want to watch this. What was this? Some kind of weird? What was this? Some weird horror propaganda? A snuff film? I mean, what it sounded like a woman. What I heard what sounded like a woman screaming, a goat yelling, someone being murdered with a power drill. This had nothing to do with Jimmy Neutron, my favorite show. I looked outside at the string. Give it back, a voice whispered. I was getting the creeps. It was midnight, and I was completely scared out of my mind. Give it back, two voices whispered. What I saw next horrified me beyond comprehension, and a small amount of vomit started to trickle up from my stomach. A potato-shaped man was approaching. He was moving very slowly, and he had a Jimmy Neutron Halloween mask on. It didn't fit because he was a grown potato. His disgusting, highly re-rendered flesh was pulsing, starch blood, as he could clutch his electric potato heart. He could barely walk, his potato innards falling out due to the baking surgery. I shuddered. He was holding a battery with his left hand, but with his right hand he reached out to strangle me. Well, I was several feet away from the window, so he couldn't reach since he only had one free hand. He opened up a bag of tater tots that I guessed were poisoned or something, and threw them at me. Try the tots, his horrific voice whispered. I wasn't gonna eat them. I don't take food from strangers. Besides, he was clearly trying to murder me. Eventually, he reached out. There's something on my... There. Oh. Eventually, he reached his hand and I closed the window on it, so he was trapped. He sort of sat there for a while, kept threatening to murder me. Insisted that he was Jimmy Neutron, but I didn't believe him. I'm Potato Neutron, he smiled. My spud kind came from a science fair in the year 2986. The scientific effects and they were muffled by the other skin from the endless 100-year Spud Wars. He sort of trailed off, and I stopped listening. I called the police, but they couldn't come out. Potato Man, the dispatcher laughed. Better bring the ketchup. He snickered, hung up on me. Idiots. He's still out there. I can't sleep too close to the window. I can't sleep too close to the window. One night I woke up and he was really close, but he can't quite reach. I don't know the atomic strength of the starch, but I'm just certain that the Potato Man is probably gonna kill me. He keeps insisting that he's Jimmy Neutron and that he loves me, and he always has. But I know better. He has he has other VHS tapes of my favorite shows, but I don't want to watch them. He keeps offering me the tapes, but I don't know where he gets them from. I told my parents, but since I'm 45, they think I'm lying. I'm not lying though. No one believes me, but every night the Potato Man tries to murder me. The neighbors saw, but they didn't do anything. Not a damn thing. State Farm, State Farm lied. Worst part is, I could really use the food. I might wait until he dies and eat him, but I know that's morbid. But tubers are among my favorite food, and he keeps saying that he's dying anyway. He grabbed me, and I began to scream as he grabbed me. Neutron! He hissed deep. Neutron! He squealed as his mask fell off his horrific eyeless potato face, and he began to smile. The smile was a sinister one. He looked devious, like if he was trying to strangle me. He was strangling me. I was being strangled by a potato man, and but I wasn't going to let him win. All my life I wanted to be something. I wanted I didn't want to spend all this time surviving to let end like this. And even though my existence had pretty much lost all feeling, I found nothing real. And nothing felt real anymore. I wrestled this evil potato man to the floor. Jimmy Neutron was an underrated television program. I screamed. I must confess, I never actually watched it for maybe like 5 minutes. But the truth, as I didn't want to, as I knew, it was great. It was a great show. Potatoes have one true weakness: fire. I took out a box of matches and lit the potato man on fire. No, he screamed. No, Dad, he said. Father. I shuddered. I love you, Father. Why did you burn me? His eyes grew sparkly as he reached out to me with love. I will always love you, Father. He began to burn and burn. The heat had burned into the outer skin of the potato flesh, and he was charred. I began to cry. I had killed my son. I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch my baking incident burn. I love you too, son, I said. Break it down as the feeble mechanism of the mind tried to understand this strange experience. I loved you so much. I reached out and began to hug the potato man. Oh, it burned, but I didn't feel anything. It's strange how you are dying for love and you don't feel anything. I love you and I always will, I said. The heat had burned away his potato chest, half sliced. He was a baked potato and butter. Sour cream, bacon bits, and several half melted VHS tapes began to pour out. I love you, Daddy, he squealed, his mouth burning away as the bubble he turned into a smoky exhaust that slowly emulsated our home. I love you too, son, I said. I tried to cry, but the heat had melted my tear ducts closed. Let's watch Jimmy Neutron. He started to cough, and smoke poured out of our lungs that were now glued together. I reached for the VHS tape player, but the heat had fused me onto the floor. I love you, baked potato. The potato man had started to laugh as we both began to melt into the floor. Maybe it tricked me. It didn't matter. Wiring electricity is a difficult job, and if your potato doesn't live, you must take responsibility. Even if your son is evil, he tries to murder you, you must continue to love him. And that's why it's called unconditional love. It means that there's nothing you could do that will ever stop them from loving you. Maybe Maybe we all want that. Some blood squirted out of my eye because the floaty CG characters were in there. I saw Jimmy Neutron from the corner of my eye melting as he winked in plastic CG surgery. We were baked, fried to a crisp. The sun is a heat lamp, and we are all hot, baked French fries. I will make you live for the love of God, for your hot, baked electric heat lamp, powered by a broken bulb. I will make you live. Also, huh, screw off with your goody two shoes. I died. I died in the potato fire because of my love of Jimmy Neutron. And one day soon, you'll get a VHS of this mail too. Will you be the one? Will you be the one of several million Americans murdered in this mysterious potato fires? Have you ever heard of this theory? That's me. I loved you so much that I literally burst into flames because of it. Then I woke up. It was all a dream. Oh wait, never mind. It wasn't a dream. I'm typing this on my melted laptop. Please send help. Me, the potatoes. Potatoes and ketchup. Uh, I'll be at your altar. Please keep going hot grease for Spuds for life, which will be so much happier without me. I love you. I love you. The end. So yeah, that was the creepypasta of the lost episode for Jimmy Neutron. To be honest, sorry, I need to stretch. It was confusing. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed those two creepypastas, the Blue's Clues and Jimmy Neutron. So, with that, I will see you next time. So don't forget to like, leave comments, subscribe, share, turn on notifications, and light it up blue. Bye.